Okay, so I'm back with the latest episode of the Orville, so if you haven't seen it, you know the drill by now. As always, I'm Al, this is a Geek in Review, and let's get to it. So, yeah, if you aren't aware, this is the longest episode of the Orville yet. We knew we were going to get ones that were going to be approaching cinema level in terms of length, and at 126 minutes, this is about 12 minutes longer than what we've been getting this season. And I did wonder how they were going to tell another Topper story so soon, especially after the last one. It's pretty close together. And I did wonder where a lot of this episode was going. I did think it did have a lot of issues, and if I was going to do an episode that was 1 hour 26 minutes, I maybe would have focused more on the Krill or the Kalon rather than something that we'd just seen a few weeks ago. But the initial setup, it is a little weird, and like I say, I think this episode is all over the place. When they're going to the colony, I thought what was going on, maybe it's going to be an alien in the forest kind of thing that they need to work together to defeat, but the episode's way more deeper than that, and there's big weight being put on Topper's shoulders here. And yeah, I did feel that it sort of hinted that it could go, as I mentioned, in a few directions. It established what was going on pretty early on, and it gets into a bit of the undiscovered vibe with the kidnapping and crossing borders and things like that. But it is a Topper episode, and she's dealing with being a teenage girl. That's the way it starts off. And when she reveals who her crush was, or when she's telling Kelly, I thought, is she talking about Gordon? She can't be talking about Gordon, because like he's a full grown man and he's Gordon. But yeah, it turns out that she is talking about him, and I suppose there could be worse people on board the ship that she could have a crush on. And the way he handles it after he works out what's going on, because he's sort of last one in the room to peg on, is great, and he handled it the way he should have handled it. I love that he didn't initially get it, and that he couldn't handle the jibes from the other guys once they'd left the room. We need to see this more kind of stuff and banter between the crew, because Scott Grimes just does it so well. We did get a Gordon-focused episode already this season, but he never got to be funny what with his family being erased from history. But yeah, a little bit more Scott Grimes. He still hasn't used that super fast shuttle that they introduced in season 1 and we keep seeing in the shuttle bay, so I wonder what's going on with that, because that's kind of been forgotten about. So it's not only a Topper focused episode, it's a Moklan episode, and I've got to be honest, I'm getting a little bit bored of these guys. One of the things that Orville does get compared to, obviously, is Star Trek, and it is copying quite a bad Star Trek trope of having alien races sort of only being the one thing or being stereotyped. You know, Klingons as warriors and Vulcans as being wise and Ferengis as being greedy. Open up these species and show us different ranges and characters and classes and the struggles and things that's going on within them. It would make them a lot more interesting, it would make storytelling a lot better. It would also give you a lot more opportunities. That goes for the Orville and Star Trek, but that's just my opinion. So yeah, while the episode starts pretty light, it does get into some heavy stuff with the Moklans and Topper as soon as they land on the planet, which, by the way, the landing scene does look great. There's some ropey CGI in this episode, but I'll get to that later on. And all seems well on the colony, and Topper feels a link to it, and Hevan, after all, she spoke at the trial on behalf of Topper to make sure that she got the right to choose, and the right to exist, I suppose. And I wasn't sure initially what direction this episode was going in, so I thought, is this going to be like, you know, they capture the crew and take them hostage? Is it going to be an alien in the forest? Is it going to be the Moklans sort of kidnap? Well, it turns out that the Moklans do kidnap people, spoiler alert, but yeah, I didn't know what was sort of going on with the first 15 minutes of this episode. But then it kind of becomes a bit clearer when Hevan and Topper get some time alone. Hevan, or Hivana, I can never remember the name, I'm sorry, asks Topper if she can basically help with the Moklan female underground and smuggle them off the planet. She's not asking her to do anything direct, it's more sort of be a middleman and pass on communications. And somehow the Moklans get wind of this and decide to kidnap Topper for the info. And yeah, let's say this is the whole Star Trek Undiscovered Country vibe, and I thought that's maybe what they were going to go for. But Boris and Kelly go after her in their own shuttle, and then Ed in the Orville shows up and confronts Hifana and sort of makes her come to terms with what she's up to, and he's pretty direct in the way that he accuses her of trying to use Topper as a pawn. And I wasn't sure, is this a statement about child soldiers or forcing a certain point of view on children? I don't know, was that just me maybe reading so much into it? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. But the big thing in this episode, and I did tweet about it where it's sort of spoiling it, is Dolly Parton, man. because this episode was losing me, I'll be honest. I thought it was all over the place, with the thing on the colony, the chase, the Orville showing up. There's a lot more going on towards the later part of the episode as well, but it's Dolly fucking Parton, and of course she sings, because why shouldn't she? If you've got Dolly Parton on your show, use her, and whatever they paid her, they got their money's worth. Although the length of the song and the fact that it was all done to sort of sweeping shots of the ship did make it feel a little bit Grey's Anatomy when they play that 3-minute ballad at the end, which they do every episode. A lot of American shows do that now. And one criticism of this episode as well is if you cut out all this sweeping CGI ship stuff, because there is a lot of it, especially when they get back to Earth, you'd probably shave about 5 to 7 minutes off of the episode. But yeah, they get back to Earth, and the pace sort of stops here for me in this episode. And when Topa arrives on the sort of secret Moklan base, I wasn't a fan of that either. If you've not seen this episode, there's quite a lot to handle. There's a lot of child violence that I can't show, obviously, and I'm not feel comfortable showing here. I did think, there's going to be some sort of, with the storyline where they try and convert her back to being a male, or seeing the right way about being a Moklan, at least from their point of view. And I thought they were going to do a whole gay conversion therapy thing. But no, it's just child torture, which is debatably even worse than that, because they really don't hold back with the violence in this episode, and it's a lot harder than I was going to expect from this show. And it's not only in this scene when Bortus and Kelly show up and rescue Topa. Bortus really lays into the guy that's been torturing his daughter, and quite rightly so. I didn't see it, but again, this is one of the best Bortus scenes I think he's ever had, and I hope we get more. But so far in this show, I don't think they've used the characters the sort of way they should have been used for a majority of the stories. But the Bortus and Topa stuff this season, especially when he's talking to Kelly, has been absolutely brilliant. And yeah, I enjoyed the last 5 minutes of this episode more than the rest. The Moklans leave the Union, which in the scope of the show is a pretty big deal. The scene stealer though is the Clyden return, and if you've seen it, you know exactly what I mean when he reunites with Topa at the end and it just accepts her. And I'm not going to go into it or ruin it, because although this episode's 126 minutes, and I do think this is the wrong story for an episode of that length, when Clyden comes back, man, it hits so hard, and the dialogue and the acting and everything is brilliant. But the last 5 minutes isn't really good enough to make up for me for the rest of the sort of 121. And what do I mean by that? So the pace of this episode just felt all over the place. It was going from these big, deep diplomatic discussions to these really violent child action sequences. The stuff with Kelly and Bortus in the shuttle, that cutting back and forward, that was pretty boring as well. And although a lot of the CGI is good, a lot of the CGI in this episode is bad, especially the bit when Bortus and Kelly are leaving the planet in the shuttle. There's a few other scenes as well. And again, they're referencing a previous episode, and this episode was the Topa one was 2 or 3 episodes ago, something like that, which, again, it's called New Horizons, and it's not really delivering on that name for me. What I think would work better, and this is just my opinion again, is give us one throwaway episode. Not every episode has to be completely heavy. The last 2 or 3, in fact a good majority of this season, I think apart from the second one, which I've not followed up yet, has been completely heavy, deep and dark stuff. Just give us a throwaway episode where nothing's going to, have a knock-on effect, or not going to need to follow up or tie it back in. And we need some B stories as well. This episode was all A story. The Gordon one was a little bit more mixed, but yeah, look, you've got the actors there, you've got the crew there, you've got the sets there, so use them a little bit more, please. At least, again, that's just my opinion. I thought as well, or at least what I would like to see, was a little bit more on the play of the comedy of Topa liking Gordon and how Bortus would feel about that. I think that would have been absolutely hilarious, and maybe it's something that will fit into the show later on. But one complaint about this, again going back to something earlier on, is the Moklans, is I find it very hard to tell the Moklans apart when there's groups of them. Doesn't matter if they're male or female or anything else. They the makeup is just so difficult to tell apart who you're looking at, and I like that they only focus on like 3 or 4 main Moklans in the show. But yeah, maybe need to do something about that to identify it, or at least lay off the Moklans. I'm beginning to feel a little bit like the Daleks in Doctor Who, that they just get roped in and brought in all the time. And again, we need to see some new races and some new horizons. But my final thing I'm going to say on this is this doesn't have the story for an hour and 26 minute episode. You could have fitted this all in 45 or 50 minutes or even an hour. It just felt like, reminded me of when I was watching Star Trek Insurrection in the cinema back in the day, and I was just like, this is just like a really long episode of Star Trek. It's not bad, but the story doesn't deserve the focus that it's getting, or at least the time that it's getting. I'll rephrase that. The story does deserve the focus that it's getting, but it doesn't deserve this 126 minutes, or at very least they could have given us some other stories or other things that were going to happen. But all in all, I still really enjoy the show, despite the gripes I had about the pace and some of the CGI. I do think this has been the worst episode of the Orville this season, but in saying that, it's still pretty strong compared to most other sci-fi shows that are on at the moment. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Did you enjoy this longer episode? Did you enjoy the story? What do you think is going to happen next with the Union now that the Moklans are out? And what do you think is going to happen with the rest of the Orville season? As always, I'm Al, thanks for watching. If you've made it this far, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. It's only a small click for you, but it means so much to me.